He's so veiny. He's so veiny.
Aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Trademark. My name is Jeremy Vaeni, and you are watching He's So Veiny. Hey, that's me. And if I'm not wearing my glasses, it's not because I had a miracle healing with my eyes. That'll make more sense to you if you see the Paratopia special I just put out for Halloween. What was I saying? Right. It's because I'm about to read to you from a book, which means I'm going to squint at the book, like right in front of my face. These glasses don't do me any good with the reading, and it's dark in here because to have any more light is for this camera to flare out and be too bright. So this is what we're dealing with here, folks. And what I'm going to read to you from is a book that just came out called The Serpent's Tail, Kundalini Yoga and the History of an Experience. It is this book here. I'm just starting it, but I have one Kundalini book, which was, I guess, compiled and edited by Ken Wilber and maybe some other people I don't remember off the top of my head. But it was a bunch of essays. I didn't find any of them to be too good, maybe one. But this is what I've been looking for, I think, which is the history of like where did the thinking on Kundalini come from? What do the original texts say? How did it morph into this consumer trap that we have now? This book follows that journey. And I'm only in chapter 1. I just got it the other day. You know, really, I shouldn't be promoting someone else's book because I have a book coming out. But that's in January, so I'll promote that later. I don't care, man. I don't care. I'm going to promote someone else's book on Kundalini. So yeah, this is written by scholars who are also yoga practitioners, and so they get it on 2 different levels, I guess. But in any event, the reason that I wanted to read a little bit from this chapter 1 here is because already in chapter 1, I'm finding an answer to, I don't know if you remember, one of the first episodes of He's So Veiny I did was like answering Aaron Apke, a guy named Aaron Apke, who was talking about Kundalini as like a seminal fluid or something. Well, here, we'll take a look at what he said here real quick, part of it, and then I just found I didn't realize that it was rooted in history. Like, you just wonder, where do people come up with this stuff? And it turns out they bastardize things they've read or that have already been interpreted for them in a bastardized way, and then they just take the ball and run with it. So here's a little bit of that from the episode.
When you're not wasting your sexual energy all the time, it begins to be used for spiritual ascension. So when a Kundalini awakening happens, that energy literally starts to be borrowed by your cerebrospinal fluid, and your cerebrospinal fluid starts to bring them up the spine towards the brain. After enough time in the brain, you'll start to experience a fluid dripping down the back of your throat. So it's literally this energy that Kundalini starts moving upwards that is upgrading your nervous system to a higher frequency level, to a 4th density level.
Wait. And then I go on to scoff at that, as I'm prone to do. So where does this idea of a fluid, Kundalini as a fluid, or Kundalini having a fluid component that works on your nervous system, rises into your brain, drips down into you, and you feel it? Let us read here from page 34. So first they're talking about the ancient Vedic period in India and the Upanishads, and the thinking on how souls are reborn, the cyclical nature of things, and sort of seeing in nature and seeing in the macro perspective how cycles work, and then finding within us a microcosmic version of that, or fractal, as I like to say, a fractal version within us. So that's the preamble. And then it says, those who manage to free themselves from the cycle of rebirth would pass through the fiery disk of the sun at death, never to return. This cosmic cyclicity had its analog inside the microcosm, or the quote-unquote little world of the human body. There, food would be distilled by the digestive fire into increasingly more refined vital constituents, all the way up to semen, which was the purest concentrate of vital energy. Later yogic traditions put the matter even more explicitly in saying that this vital fluid, which they often refer to as bindu, the seminal drop, drips down from its proper reservoir into the head, into the abdominal pit housing the digestive fire, where it feeds the life cycle that inevitably ends in death and rebirth. And so within the human body, as within the world, two fires burn above and below, the sun representing life, but also the passage of time to which all life is subject, sent its fire down to heat the earth and to cook the vital materials of the human body. The moon, for its part, served as the reservoir of that elusive immortal nectar, the amrata, of which human semen was the bodily counterpart, forever destined to drip downward like grains of sand in an hourglass, counting down to the moment of death when the glass would be turned again. Ascetic traditions developing within the northeastern region of Greater Magadha, and I apologize if I am butchering names here, modern-day Bihar and eastern Uttar Pradesh, around this time attempted to address this situation by mortifying the body. Perceiving the bonds of karma, the law of action and reaction, to be the ontological basis of the self's entrapment in the cycle of rebirth, they sought to arrest the accumulation of karmic seeds, as well as to destroy the storehouse already acquired, which meant manipulating both the body's external actions as well as its internal processes. Glasses! Look at that. Movie magic. And then they go on to describe how the ascetics would do that, right? So and some of it involves like hanging upside down so the seminal fluid doesn't go all the way down. Like it sounds like the fluid, the amrata, dripping down is like they're saying, counting down to your death almost. And even if I have that wrong, if I'm misinterpreting that or whatever, does any of that sound like what Aaron Aki was talking about? And also, talking about the two flames, the sun above and then the fire within, and how they work alike. Is that where we get like twin flames from? Like, are people just picking terms? Amrata, Amrita, however he's pronouncing it. In the book, it is spelled Amrta. So I don't even know if there's an I sound in there or what. Amrta. I don't know. Amrta. Because there's a little accent under the R, so maybe it's Amrta. I don't know how it's pronounced, but I don't know that he's pronouncing it correctly. Like, I just feel like we take these terms and we do these loose associations and go like, how can I make money off this? Or how can I come up with an explanation that makes me look like some sort of expert on this? So yeah, it's just kind of cool to see that some of these things do come from somewhere. They're not just all gobbledygook crazy talk. They're gobbledygook crazy talk transposed onto another culture's beliefs and experiences. So I don't know that that's any better. But here's the reason I've really brought you here is to examine yet another video. It's talking about the science of a Kundalini awakening, and I have seen most of this one, maybe all of this one, but I stopped paying attention at some point. But I just want to say up front that it says it's a pilot sketch in the description, and you can find it in the description, the link to the original video, and go watch it yourself. But it says it's a pilot sketch, and indeed it does look like a someone doing sketch comedy, except not really trying to explain something by making it fun, which I appreciate. So I just want to say to the dude who slapped this together and bothered to memorize lines and play two parts and speed read or speed, I don't know if he's got cue cards or if he just remembers all this stuff, but he really speeds through it at a pace and sort of fast talks the explanation to try to, I think, cram as much info into a small amount of time for people with no attention spans, which doesn't really do the subject justice, although it may get people interested in it. But I mean, to me, the overarching problem there is that none of it's true. So I appreciate the attempt, is what I'm going to say. And I'm not here to bag on this person for doing this video. You know, you work with the information you've got. I'm just saying, let's go through it and we'll see where the information falls apart and why and all of that. Okay.
Bro, most people don't know the secrets of what this Kundalini thing actually is from a science and a spiritual perspective. You don't know what I know, son? I'm not your son. What if I told you that there's a scientific explanation for how it works that was so interesting that certain three-letter agencies secretly studied it, and now we have the released documents to prove it? What document are you talking about? Well, everyone knows about the gateway process stuff. And in that document, they mention a guy named Itzhak Bentov, and how a lot of the document is based on his work. And his work explains the Kundalini process. So I went beyond the document that everyone's looked at, and I dug deep to understand the science of the Kundalini and what these agencies were so deeply interested in. Let me tell you, it's wild.
So here's what I want to say up front. It's not a big deal that the three-letter agencies were into Kundalini. They're into anything that they can. I'm sure they've looked at anything and everything as far as claims that they can militarize, like make super soldiers out of, or whatever, in terms of psychic abilities, yoga, meditation, all of it. So in other words, like, we love to say, like, oh, there was a project so-and-so that they shredded the documents on, and it, or MK Ultra or whatever it is. Well, maybe that's a bad example, but that there are, because I think, wasn't MK Ultra the one with the drugs? If I'm wrong about that, I think that's the one with the drugs. Of course, you wouldn't want anyone to know that you know, drugged people, and targeted, you know, minority groups or whatever it is. But it wouldn't surprise me if they shredded all of the documents on psychic stuff too, just out of, like, embarrassment or whatever, or not wanting their funding cut for looking into things that, you know, are socially unacceptable. I don't know what. But my real point is, it's not surprising that they would look into this stuff, because why wouldn't they? So when people hold that up as, like, look, this must be more real than real, they must really understand something. No, it just means they looked into something. And getting into, or hearkening back to the last He's So Vaeni I did, talking about, like, how we shouldn't just wholeheartedly trust old information. Like, you don't do that in science. Science evolves. And yet when it comes to this sort of stuff, we go back to the old information and we go, oh, they must have had it. But what if they only had a partial insight? What if they only sort of knew about Kundalini from a certain perspective, but not the whole thing? But we don't know that because we've already put them on a pedestal as the sages and the whatever, the purveyors of wisdom. And so it is with this stuff. Like, we're going to take a look at this crazy looking old scientist from somewhere who wrote a book once about Kundalini, and we're going to be like, that's it. He's onto it. This outlier data from this crazy scientist I've never heard of. I don't think it works that way often, but you could get lucky, I guess. Let's see if we do. Let's see if we get lucky here. And this is the answer.
Well, tell me then. Well, first, you need to understand why it's so misunderstood. It's because when you activate it, it's kind of like having, stick with me, the power to use the Force.
Except that you don't activate it and you don't use the power. So there's that.
Okay, buddy, now you're memeing me. Listen, relax, Barb. What I mean is that you can use the power for good, or it can overrun you and turn you evil. And it's no wonder all the Christians scream, demons! Because think about it. If you were a Christian and you saw a Jedi doing Jedi shit, you'd automatically call it evil because that's what you're programmed to believe. But it can still be dangerous if you aren't ready, which is why you need to reach a certain level of consciousness before you activate it, or you might cause major psychological and physical issues. But we'll get into that and its mechanisms a little bit later on.
See, I guess part of the problem with doing this way in this sort of casual, I mean, I guess maybe I'm going to backtrack here. Is it any different than Aaron Apke from before? Where you're just sort of casually stating these truth claims and these fact claims about an unknown that you've not experienced. Like, oh, it could turn you evil. Well, it's confusing here. Are you really saying that it can turn you evil, or are you saying that Christians would view it as turning you evil, but really the danger is that if you're not ready for triggering it, it can screw you up? Which meanwhile, all of that is wrong. Like there is, again, no triggering, no, okay. You get it. You know my shtick by now.
First, we need to go big picture. What's the purpose of this whole Kundalini shit? Well, according to our boy Bentov, the Kundalini activated is the next step in the evolution of human consciousness, specifically the next step for the human nervous system.
So again, here we are again with like Apke talking about the nervous system and this idea of it being the next step in evolution. Let me ask you this. We've been hearing about Kundalini for thousands of years, and it's an energy that transcends and includes us. Is that evolution, or is that instantaneous? Is that like, how is it the next stage of evolution and people thousands of years ago had a better handle on it than YouTube people from today? It just seems a little, how you say, Western prejudicial, Western arrogance, Western, that thing.
Think of the body as a vehicle that is constantly evolving. Bentov has a model of the Kundalini process he calls the Physio-Kundalini syndrome. This model has been scientifically studied, by the way, and corroborated in books like Kundalini, Psychosis, or Transcendence.
Well, so I don't think that's the way science works. Like, I don't think, maybe I need to have Dr. Tyler Kochon on here to school me, but I'm pretty sure that you release a scientific paper after it has been peer reviewed, and then either that's the corroboration because they know what they're talking about, or other people do studies that corroborate. But like, to be like, this guy put out a book and then this other guy put out a book, I don't think that's the way scientific corroboration works.
Where they studied many individuals that had so-called Kundalini awakenings and found that Bentov's model seems to be accurate through a lot of analysis of their own case studies of a lot of different people. But there's levels to this shit. Let's go one step deeper. Now, Bentov's model actually works off another guy's model of the nervous system. That's Hans Sell, which in his book, The Stress of Life, he explains that when a body is filled with stresses, the nervous system is so busy handling them that its potential for attaining higher states of consciousness is super limited. Basically, there's too much jitteriness, or in kind of technical terms, too much noise in the system, which prevents the nervous system from rising to another level or evolving. And all schools of meditation emphasize the importance of calming down the body. But of course, the stresses in the system are actually energy patterns, and they have to be converted and eliminated and alchemized, whatever you want to call it, from the body.
Yai. It's not about the nervous system, so it's already patently false. It sounds like these were materialists looking for material body explanations for Kundalini. But also, I would say that the schools of meditation that are like, you must calm yourself and center yourself, and, this is about bringing you into balance, but it's also about silence, right? Or it's about replicas. What they're trying to do is sort of replicate silence. You focus in on one thought. You let your thoughts drift through your mind and you don't attach to them. Be non-attached. Yeah, you want to be calm and centered and all that. All of that isn't about your nervous system, even if they say it is. All of that is trying to replicate silence while you still remain as an activity, which can't happen. But silence, therefore, means the death of self, and that's what it's about. So barring the death of self, these meditation schools of thought tell you to fake it, tell you to be more relaxed, more calm, more focused, or less attached, but it's still you deciding to do the thing, to be less attached, you trying to practice non-attachment. Therefore, you're not non-attached. You're not, because that is a state of mind or a stage of mind. But not this sort of state of hypnotizing yourself into believing you've achieved that mind by creating less stress or less attachment. You're still there, therefore attachment.
So let me get this straight. You're telling me that if there's too many frequencies making too much noise inside of our nervous system, we feel stress, and it keeps us from evolving our nervous system through the Kundalini? So is that why we're bombarded by frequencies all the time? Maybe. But I think the important part is that the Kundalini process is actually meant to be what Bentov calls the ultimate stress relieving mechanism. But if the process is done wrong or prematurely, then it can cause what institutions might call psychosis. How can you do it prematurely? Well, there's those main ways. Number one, you can have it happen on accident when you're not spiritually, mentally, or psychologically prepared. What could happen, as the three-letter agencies documented, by the way, is that when people are exposed to frequencies within 4 to 7 hertz range, those frequencies can activate the Kundalini.
Or are they activating something that you're calling Kundalini? Like, again, I'm struck by how we all think we're talking about the same thing. Just because you put one word to a bunch of definitions doesn't mean that they're all reflective of the word, or that the word is saying the same thing in all those definitions, you know? So to me, this is kind of baffling.
And an example that the agencies documented where your car could vibrate at those frequencies, your air conditioner, etc. The reason why it's premature leads into number 2. We can call a premature Kundalini awakening one where you haven't cleared enough noise or jitteriness or energy patterns, whatever you want to call it, out of the system yet, so the Kundalini energy tries to rise to clear the blockages. But with too many blocks, usually it's too much.
So here's something I haven't really touched on, but like when the Kundalini, when the self is no more and Kundalini therefore has space to rise, you're the blockage. You're the thing blocking out that which transcends and includes you, coming, this will of silence coming alive in the body. And the idea that it rises through energy centers and has a problem clearing them out is not true. Like, you're the blockage, man. I'm not denying that these energy centers exist, but that they're full of karmic crap or whatever they're full of, energy blockages. I don't know how true that is, but to the extent that it is true, it's not painful and discomforting and all this stuff. It's not drastic, you know? Everyone always makes this stuff sound so drastic, and there are like a couple of moments of drastic, but if you're not careful, like for instance, my back blowing out and slipping a disc when it initially rose that first and final time, because it only rises the once, it only comes alive when, then it's alive. So this idea of you turning it on and off is garbage. But yeah, but that was because I am out of shape. If I were in the shape of maybe this guy or someone who does yoga, I've talked about this before, right? Like if I did back exercises, if I were in good shape, that probably wouldn't have happened. But of course, you can't get in shape in the expectation of something like this happening, or you, again, remain the blockage. Your expectation becomes the block to the thing. Of course, I didn't know anything about Kundalini. I didn't know anything about any of this. I had no expectations that anything would occur or anything. There was just a moment of silence where I was not, and then boom, Kundalini. So I didn't even, I was not prepared, and I didn't know to prepare for anything. And if I had, it probably wouldn't have happened, because irony.
which causes psychosis because people start to freak out because it's kind of like fire. In comparison, if someone has been meditating for years, clearing out all the noise, when that rises, it's a much smoother process because there's not as much fire needed. There's not as much heat created or energy needed to remove the blocks.
So again, I am struck by this, Kundalini as fire, which, broiling in the belly and rising. Like, it seems like maybe again a bastardization of the Upanishads or something, or some ancient school of thought on this stuff. But again, it's not physiological. It's not you doing it. So there is no there's no fear of you triggering accidentally or on purpose through Kundalini yoga or by whatever means actual Kundalini. What you're triggering is you. What you're triggering is the blockage. When I'm saying that you're a blockage, I mean, that's not just a metaphor. That metaphor also kind of has a space that it occupies. And it's kind of this amorphous blockage, a clot, that is a combination of, that energy plus you, which I believe then creates some of these other effects. Which I talk about in my book. So I won't belabor that point now, but just let it be enough to say the only blockage is you. And so you trying to make Kundalini rise and fall, or you having a spontaneous so-called Kundalini awakening that you then play with, is all just you playing with yourself. That's all it is. And to say that's all it is to downplay whatever one experiences and feels, because it can, let's give you the benefit of the doubt here. Maybe you have some sort of visualizations or psychic happenings and all of that. But that's still not it. If it's not the death of self, it's still within the realm of the mind. It's not that which transcends and includes the human mind. It is from the human mind. Or the human stream of consciousness, let's put it that way.
What do you mean exactly when you're saying that the Kundalini is activated or rising? Okay, so let's go back a little bit. The Kundalini, as described in yoga literature, is said to be an energy coiled up like a serpent at the base of your spine. And when this energy is awakened, it enters the spine, rises up along it, and is seen or perceived as this luminous serpent.
So what's interesting too is in this book, The Serpent's Tail, I'm also learning that this sort of caricature of Kundalini isn't the only one. There are also, and the association with the serpent, with the snake, isn't the only animal that it's associated with. There are others. So I find it interesting, this is the one that's stuck, and this is the one that he is talking about, and presumably, I guess, these people that he has read and that the three-letter agencies have read are using these analogies or claiming that this is the way it works. But there are other schools of thought that say it works different ways. So just throwing that out there. And whether any of them are true or not, you know what I'm going to tell you.
By the person having the experience. Once it has risen all the way up through the head, the luminous rod hopefully pierces the top of the head. That is, the rod-like energy beam is seen as projecting through the skull, pointing upward. When this happens, the person is said to be illuminated. Eventually, such a person may become highly intuitive and develop psychic powers such as clairvoyance, clairaudience, or healing abilities. Whether he develops these or not depends on many factors. So again, the important part is that if the process begins to happen in someone who has too much noise or stress type energy patterns, basically blocks, the Kundalini will actually try to burn its way through the blockages. And if you have a lot of blockages and you have no spiritual advancement or maturity to know how to handle those blockages, it can be quite detrimental. In the Psychosis or Transcendence book, this is a well-documented phenomenon with the burning sensation and basically the fire burning its way through the blocks within the body and the nervous system.
Does it though? Or does one just keep experiencing that? I mean, do any, I haven't read the book, so I don't know, but do any of them actually get through all those blockages and then become this enlightened spirit rod person? Or do they just keep playing out the same old traumas in the body over and over again? I wonder. But again, none of this is valid.
This is why it's not wise to just try to raise your Kundalini for fun or if you want spiritual powers. Now, what's the science part of the Kundalini awakening? Well, there's two different parts to explain here. That being the pineal gland part, which in itself is a complex conversation. So let's focus on the whole process and we'll chat about the pineal gland mechanisms another time.
Let me guess, the pineal gland creates DMT. Has that even been proven, or is that just something that people suppose is true? I can't remember. Somebody tell me in the comments and show me a source, because you can just tell me and then I'll repeat it and be wrong too if you're wrong. So, but anyway.
So as to start, you draw your energy up the spine with effort, or you can allow the process to happen on its own or spontaneously like we talked about. Either way, here's Bentov's explanation, as the three-letter agencies documented, and in his book, Stalking the Wild Pendulum. Either way, the energy is drawn up the spinal cord, which seems to create acoustical standing waves in the cerebral ventricles, which then are conducted to gray matter in the cerebral cortex on the right side of the brain.
So does this scientific explanation, like, I just picture, because it's long ago, right, that this guy wrote this book, do they have like tape reels in the background of the spaceship? You remember the old sci-fi where like every spaceship would have like tape reels? I mean, it does this and it does this, and we've proven it, because this book here was written and the three-letter agencies agree. Also, the idea that you have psychic or even healing abilities equals enlightenment isn't true. There are plenty of psychics, right? And mediums and all sorts of versions of psychic ability. And there are people who have had just, quote unquote, normal everyday people who have psychic burps, right? Psychic hiccups in their lives, or synchronicities, or grandma comes back to say, hey, I died and I'm okay. We have all sorts of psychic phenomena in our lives all the time. And that doesn't make us enlightened, whatever. So again, I'm stuck with like, we're not even defining what enlightenment means. Just like energy goes out the top of your head and you suddenly have powers like the Force. Is that what it's about? It's not about, like this evolution and man is about having powers that you can then use for good or evil. I mean, we already have that all around it. That's what we do now. That's not evolution. That's just more trinkets to play with. That's bigger and better weapons, or lazier weapons, because you don't have to actually buy them. They're just in you. So that's not enlightening, right? Isn't enlightenment about living the oneness that we are, and therefore choicelessly being good, choicelessly doing right action, because that's all one can do? How do we do that? How do we get there? Instead of, and then you won't even care about psychic powers, whether they exist or not, will be an afterthought.
These standing waves are triggered by the heart's rhythm when it changes, and they cause vibrations in the walls of the ventricles. And the ventricles are fluid-filled cavities in the brain. These vibrations will stimulate and eventually polarize the cortex in such a way that it will tend to conduct a signal along the homunculus, starting from the toes of the homunculus and up, which is different than what it normally does.
Wait, isn't a homunculus some sort of golem? Never mind.
The state of bliss described by those who have the Kundalini type experiences might just be the Kundalini completing the loop with both hemispheres of the brain, which stimulates the pleasure centers in the brain, which again, to try to keep it simple, is caused by the circulation of a current along the sensory cortex. And only when the unfolding Kundalini reaches areas of stress in the body do the symptoms become troublesome. The symptoms will persist until the stresses in that particular area of the body are released, and then this will usually appear as localized pain. That's because remember the burning sensation type feeling. When that happens, the Kundalini moves on until it reaches the next spot of stress, and then it clears that. And the severity of the symptoms is always proportional to the degree of stress that the Kundalini energy encounters on its way up the spine.
Okay, I think I'm done with this. You can watch the rest on your own. So, what are you going to do? It's just bad information. No offense to this guy. I know he put a lot of effort into this, and he wouldn't know. So how, no shade on you, fella. You did your best with what you got, but you got rooked. Like nonsense. Here's something else. I'll just leave you with this. And I talked about this in the Paratopia special. I put a PS in my book about it, about the back injury that originally happened, because I talk about that in the book. And by the way, my book is going to be called Kundalini and the Secrets of Silence. So look for that January 8th. There's my plug for my book. The Serpent's Tail is out now, and it just came out at the end of 2025. So I highly recommend it, even though I'm only in chapter 1. It just looks like it's going to be a really well documented journey that I may not fully agree with. In fact, in the prologue, I've already found something where I'm like, no. But, regardless, if you want to take that historical journey, I think this is probably going to end up being the go-to book for that. But what I want to say about the injury that I said in Paratopia, that I said in my book, is antithetical to what he's saying here, which is like the Kundalini rises, and it just sounds like it rises, and it takes however long it takes to clear out these blockages, and then it rises some more and clears out the blockages, and then rises some more. This thing like broke my back, and to where I ended up in the emergency room on morphine and was told that I needed back surgery. And part of so I had the 2 slip discs on either side, and the one on the right was so painful that the doctor said that's probably why you don't feel the one on the left. But I'll just, the short version is, now that was 25 years ago. And with that were these 2, I guess, I don't know what the doctor's name for it is, I don't remember, but basically 2 balls of fat on either side of my lower back that were pressing in. And I think they were sort of probably like calluses, like trying to make up for the fact that I've got these 2 slip discs that I could do nothing about because I didn't have insurance. Like they were saying you need to do back surgery, and then they found out I didn't have insurance, and then they were like, you need to leave. So through the years, I've done physical therapy. I've gone to see chiropractors. I did see a doctor who told me about the balls of fat back when I lived in New York, and he was like, these are just going to probably get bigger as you age, and but you'll just have to put up with the pain, right? They cause pressure, and there's some pain, but you'll just have to put up with it, because unless they turn tumorous, you really don't want to have back surgery because you don't want to screw with your back. So I was like, okay. So 2 problems then: these balls of fat and the slipped discs. So here we are, cut to 25 years later. I've just finished this book, and I don't think I said this on the Paratopia episode, but we had, maybe I did, I don't remember. We had people who were staying with us, and so to prepare for them, I was like cleaning up the yard, like yanking up, tall grass and weeds, and like picking up massive branches and stuff, and putting a lot of strain on my back, to the point where, like, on my left side, the sciatica was so bad that I couldn't stand, sit, or lie down comfortably, like nothing. So I unleashed the meditation energy, the Kundalini, as it were. I shut up for long enough for it to come alive and speak the language. And so I just kept, I did this a number of days, and lo and behold, out in the gazebo, after I've written the book, after I've sent it off to people to review, the Kundalini does its own chiropractor stuff. And not only is my sciatica healed, not only for the first time in 25 years, but those balls of fat are gone. Like, And it didn't dawn on me. Like, I'd forgotten about the balls of fat thing until a couple of days later. And so I was like, oh, wait, yeah. So even if the sciatica's gone, shouldn't there... But they're gone. Like, you could feel them. And my wife Carol said you could see them. So I just told her about this a couple of days ago. I didn't tell her about the balls of fat then. I don't know why. It's weirdness abounds with the balls of fat thing. Like, and I talk about in the book, well, I don't want to talk about what I talk about in the book. Never mind. You would think that the second I remembered the balls of fat thing, I would immediately just touch my own back to see if they're there. But I didn't. Even though I was like walking out, like for days in a row, I would walk out to the gazebo, like I would remember the thing, and it'd be like, oh, you should just touch your back and see if they're there. And I just didn't. Like, I would immediately forget, like, to do that. It's just bizarre. But eventually I didn't forget, and I was like, do it. So, and they're not there. I talked about it on Paratopia, and then I told Carol about it after I'd recorded about it. And she's like, let me see, because she says that they were visible lumps. And she said they're not, yeah, she's like, they're not there anymore. And she's touching around. She's like, yeah, they're gone. So all of this is to say that 25 years after Kundalini fucked up my back, Kundalini healed my back. Now, this isn't the first time I've gone out and said, hey, can you help my back? I mean, it's been doing this all along. I go out to the gazebo, do chiropractor stuff. Not I do it, but it does it, you know, stretching and bending and crickety crack and all this sort of stuff. But the original injury was always persistently there. And the thing that I'd always, or at least long thought about it, well, I think always thought about it, was that it was literally because I was out of shape when this thing rose, but also metaphorically, like, you'll be healed when you get a spine. Meaning, when I do the well, I didn't know what it meant, but I felt like there was something in me that was being a coward. And when I stopped being a coward about it, when you get your spine, you'll get your spine back. And I think what I wrote in this book, and I know that this sounds like a terrible sales pitch, but I don't give a shit. What I wrote in this book, there are certain things I wrote and the way that I wrote them that I haven't done before. And I feel like it was the combination lock of, I don't know if you want to call it bravery or just getting over myself to say it the way it needed to be said and just do it. And just do it. And when I did it and then sent it off to be reviewed, which to my mind means, okay, we're done here. That was the combination for the Kundalini to then be like, okay, you get your spine back after 25 years. So that is the very long way of saying that, like, it's not rising and then clearing out and fixing things. No, there is very much an intelligence that is deciding when you're ready, or, you know, something along those lines. It's not just an energy in the body that rises mechanically. And no, it's intelligence, you know? And it's not just doing it then. There can be a 25-year span before, you know, the original thing gets fixed. It's however long you stay fucked up is how long you stay fucked up, right? So that's just weird to say, but there it is. So yay, I'm fixed. Now, whether this intelligence is actually separate from you, or is you in denial of your full oneness, is another conversation to have. But as far as it being just a physiological product of the nervous system or evolutionary energy that's working on the nervous system or something, I mean, that's so reductive and silly and Western biased that it's not even worth really contemplating, except we have to, because this is all we've got out here. And this book, The Serpent's Tail, that I'm reading now, is making that clear, that, like, there are no real good authorities on Kundalini. There just aren't. going back all the way, you know, as far back as you can go. I mean, maybe they'll get into it in the book, but my intuition tells me that, of course, there are people who do know through experience or have known through experience, and that they wouldn't write it down. I mean, they do say that bit about writing, finding it in writings being a problem, but also, would they tell it to white people? Like, we haven't gotten to that part yet, but like, I'm sure it's in there. You know, either the mistranslation or the just truth being withheld from like white colonialists coming at you and asking you for all your secrets. You know, I'm sure we ain't getting the whole picture here. That's all. But anyway, I think that's enough for now, right? Hey, I'm only on chapter 1, so if you want to pick up The Serpent's Tail, Kundalini, Yoga, and the History of an Experience, and read along with me, give me your thoughts in the comments here or wherever you find me on social media. And that's it. I'm sure I'll bug you more about my book the closer we get to January 8th. So there you go. Ciao.
He's so very